In this video, we'll talk about carbohydrates. Are they an essential food with many important roles within the body, or the cause of our global weight problem? Let's begin with a case against carbs, and that is that we should eat what our body expects us to eat, what we've evolved to eat, or in other words, what our ancestors ate. Not eating the foods to which our body has adapted over hundreds of thousands of years is akin to a cow not eating grass and a lion not eating meat. And try putting a lion on a diet of white bread and chocolate and see how its health fares. So cows are supposed to eat grass, but what are humans supposed to eat? Well, we know that our ancestors were hunter-gatherers whose main source of calories would have almost certainly come from other animals in the form of protein and fat, and who would have only consumed carbohydrates in small quantities and infrequently, for example during the fruiting season just before the winter. But this is confusing because today we're told to avoid fat and that most of our calories should come from carbohydrates. Now the issue here, other than the fact that this advice clearly isn't working, is that carbs, so rice, potatoes, grains, etc., have only been consumed in any significant quantity since the agricultural revolution some 8 to 12,000 years ago, which is a tiny period of time as far as evolution is concerned. In fact, it only makes up a fraction of a percent of our whole 6 million year history. Now what this means in simple terms is that the body hasn't had time to become accustomed to consuming lots of carbohydrates 3 times a day. So what's the result of humans switching over to a diet rich in carbohydrates, particularly refined grains and sugar? Well, in 1980, the American and soon-to-be international food guidelines were released, telling everyone to eat less of the healthy saturated animal fats that they've been eating for thousands of years and more low-fat, heart-healthy grains. As you can see, the effect on public health was almost immediate, and obesity has been rising ever since. Still not convinced? Well, let's look at farming, where to fatten animals up in preparation for slaughter, we give them feed rich in carbohydrate, namely grains like corn. Take a look at the fatty liver of a foie gras goose who was force-fed grain prior to slaughter, compared to that of a healthy goose eating a natural diet of shoots, seeds and insects. Wagyu beef is another interesting example. The meat is prized for its fatty marbling, which is achieved by both limiting the cow's movement and feeding them, unsurprisingly, huge quantities of grain. So clearly excessive carbohydrate consumption has a huge hand to play in our problem with obesity. But don't I need plenty of carbohydrate to be healthy? Well, actually carbohydrate is the one macronutrient that we don't need, not one single gram. Fat and protein are the other two, and they are essential, but the body can produce all the glucose it needs from protein in a process called gluconeogenesis. This is why the Inuit, the indigenous people of the Arctic, can thrive for much of the year on almost exclusively seal meat, as plants don't grow that far north. Interestingly, things like cancer, dental problems, coronary heart disease, and diabetes are almost unheard of in these populations. So eating too many carbohydrates makes us gain weight, but how? What actually happens inside your body when you eat a bowl of rice? So I'll try to keep this brief. When we eat rice, it's broken down through the process of digestion and ends up in the bloodstream as glucose, which is a sugar and the base unit of carbohydrate. Now when our blood sugar goes up, insulin is released from the pancreas, and insulin is a very important hormone which has 2 crucial effects on the body. Number 1, it tells the body to store the glucose, firstly in the muscle cells and liver, and then as body fat, so it puts us in a fat storage state. Number 2, it prevents your body from breaking down its stored body fat, kicking you out of a fat burning state. So whenever insulin is elevated in your body, you're storing fat, if you have excess calories available, and you are not burning fat. The worst possible combination if you're trying to lose weight. This is why type 1 diabetics who are unable to produce their own insulin and have to inject it often accumulate fat around the injection site, and why mice injected with insulin turn out like this. So the most important thing to take away from this is that the only way to start burning body fat is to lower your insulin levels. And since carbohydrate has by far the greatest impact on insulin, the most logical thing to do would be to drastically reduce the amount of carbohydrate in your diet, particularly refined grains and sugar. Now I'll go into detail on how to do this in another video, but for now, why not start by reducing the carbohydrate component of your meals and replacing it with healthy fats and proteins. For example, try eating less rice with dinner and replacing it with more meat, eggs and green vegetables. Also, sugar really is the first thing that must go, as it has the greatest effect on insulin. So if you have a sugar habit, that should be your first priority. Of course, an even better way to get insulin levels down is to not eat at all, and that's where intermittent fasting comes in. Click the banner for a beginner's guide. Okay, so that's it for this video, but be sure to subscribe to the channel to be notified as soon as I upload the next one. Also, please go ahead and share this content with anyone you think might benefit. As always, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.